Welcome to our next video in 3D content creation for Replic8. In this video, we'll be going over the Replic8 Animation Isolator installed along with your Replic8 exporter and how we can use that within 3D Studio Max as we're developing content for the Replic8 equipment previewer. Alright, let's go ahead and take a look. We'll be utilizing Max 2011 for this demo again, and we'll be taking a look at the Cummins 855 file within your Replic8 exporter samples directory. Now, when you start creating some more in-depth content like this example for your Replic8 equipment, you'll start to realize that adding animations for all necessary objects will start to clutter your viewport and make it confusing to figure out how your objects will be interacting with one another, especially if they reside in a max hierarchy where parented objects have their own animation. And the reasoning for that is we try to keep all of our animations going through their full range of motion from 0 to 100 for easier implementation within the Replic8 editor. Now, that necessitated the use of the Replic8 Animation Isolator within Max, and that comes bundled with the Replic8 exporter for your use. So going back for a second, I wanted to take a look at, show you that this intake bracket and the bolt, the clamp nut here, they both have animations on them, individual animations, but we really can't tell how they're going to look in the final product since our crossover intake here is animating. And for that, we'll go ahead and take a look at the Animation Isolator. It's already installed as a macro script, and if you've never used a macro script before, here's the easiest way that you can implement it. So we'll go to Customize and go to Customize User Interface, and we'll want to create a new toolbar for it. So we'll go over to Toolbar, create a new one, and say Animation Isolator be the name of our new toolbar, and that will pop up in a floater here. We'll go to the category section, and we can find the Replic8 Animation Isolator here under the Disty Scripts category. And all you need to do is drag it over to your new toolbar, and we've got a button that we can use to launch it at any point. So we'll go ahead and dock that right up here next to our rendering settings. And that's all you need to do to implement a macro script. So we'll go ahead and launch that. So we'll go ahead and create a slider for our intake bracket clip here. And we're faced with two buttons here. You can either create a slider for selected objects, so that is a single slider for multiple selected objects, or you can create a slider for each selected object. So say I've got multiple objects, I can create a slider for each selected object, and I end up with 3 different sliders. But let's just concentrate on the first one for right now, so we'll go ahead and exit out of those and just select the object that we're going to be working with. And you can see that if we drag our slider, it's showing us a individual preview of the animation that's already stored on this object. Now what's happening is when you have an object that's contained within a slider group, which you can note here, we can add multiple objects once a slider group has been created. Now we've added the clamp nut here. Any objects under the control of a slider group will be temporarily fulfilling the function of the main max timeline. And you can view which frame we're currently looking at by viewing this number here, and we can cycle through some of the frame numbers. And we can even actually continue making alterations to the object by slightly adjusting the transform's position. And we'll be actually adjusting the key on frame 30 there. When we drag it back to 0, we'll see that frame 30 has a key. Can drag it to frame 50, make a slight adjustment, drag it back, and now we've got a new key on frame 50. And of course, at any time we can remove our objects, so we'll go ahead and remove that intake bracket clip from the control of our slider, and it will pop back to position. Even if we are in another frame. So let's go ahead and create a new slider for the bottom here and close it out, and we'll see that its animation is restored back to the main timeline. So go ahead and open up another file here, the screwdriver file, which you can get access to from this web page. And we'll take a look at some of the more advanced features that the Replic8 Animation Isolator has. Now, when you first open up the screwdriver test file, I want you to take a look at this middle example here. And we see that the screwdriver comes down and uninstalls the screw here. And that's pretty much how we'll want our actions to play out within Replic8. And while we can create the animations like this within 3D Studio Max, when we bring these over for assigning behaviors within Replic8, we're going to have to do a little bit of extra work when we assign the animated toggle behavior, because we'll have to tell the animated toggle behavior that our animation starts at 70 and moves through 100. So generally, for ease of developing our behaviors, we'll generally have our objects animations happening from 0 to 100, going through their full range of movement, much like this left example here. And obviously that creates a problem when we're watching the animation in 3D Studio Max, because it's difficult for us to visualize how these two objects are going to interact. So we'll go ahead and create a slider group here, and we're going to take advantage of the linked slider group functionality. And to do that, we're going to go ahead and advance the screwdriver's animation to 70 where they meet up. We'll go ahead and click link on both of these slider groups, and when we advance one slider, it'll advance the other in the same manner. And that's due to the fact that they're both checked, linked slider group, and they're both in group 1. The Replic8 Animation Isolator supports up to 4 separate collections of sliders. We can continue adding more sliders to this and continuing to link those at the first slider group, and the whole thing will advance as well. So the other action here, you may find that your project calls for some elements to have a reversed animation within 3D Studio Max for ease of developing. And we can open up the Replic8 Isolator and create a slider for each of those objects. We'll go ahead and advance the screwdriver to the end of its animation, and we'll link those, and we can tell either or object that we want an inverse relationship, between their animations, and we can play them out. We can see that they will interact just fine within the Replicate environment. So the final feature in the Replicate Animation Isolator is, let's say you've spent a lot of time creating a lot of animation groups, and you'll get to the end of the day and you don't want to bother setting it up again in the morning. You can save a configuration out. We'll call it test configuration, and we'll save that, close it down. Go ahead and open it up in the morning, and we'll get the same settings that we saved out the night previous.
Okay, so that concludes our first look at the Replicate Animation Isolator. As always, further questions can be directed to support@disty.com. So enjoy, and thanks for watching.